We all think we have a pretty good handle on what a crime is. But what if I told you that sometimes breaking the law is, well, the right thing to do? Today, we're diving into the really fascinating legal paradox of justification defenses. Break the law legally? It sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it? But the law is actually full of them. The short answer is, yeah, kind of. And the how is what we're about to unpack right now. So let's be clear, this isn't about finding some sneaky little loophole. This is a core principle of our entire legal system. This idea that certain actions, even if they're technically crimes, are actually necessary and therefore justified by the circumstances. And this is what's called a justification defense. The key thing to get here is that the defendant isn't denying what they did. Nope. They're basically standing up in court and saying, yes, I did that. And you know what? I was right to do it. It's a really bold claim, but sometimes it actually works. A really good way to think about it is like a get-out-of-jail-free card, but one that's written by the law itself. In these truly exceptional situations, the law basically looks at what happened and says, yeah, okay, we get it. Given the situation, you're excused. So when does the law hand out these permission slips? Well, the most common examples are probably exactly what you're thinking of right now: defending yourself, defending other people, or defending your property. But, claiming self-defense isn't as simple as it looks on TV. There's a pretty strict three-part test. First, the threat has to be imminent, like it's happening right this second, not an hour from now. Second, your response has to be proportional. You can't bring a cannon to a fist fight, so to speak. And third, your fear has to be reasonable, meaning would an ordinary person in your exact shoes feel the same way? It's a surprisingly high bar to clear. Defending a person, that makes a lot of sense, right? But what about your stuff? Can you use that same level of force to protect your car as you would to protect your life? The law has a very, very clear answer on this one. And this is where the law's core values become crystal clear. Deadly force? Yeah, it might be justified to save a life from imminent, serious harm. But to save your TV? No way. Not even close. The legal system draws a really hard line here, and it reflects a deep societal belief. Human life is just infinitely more valuable than property, period. All right, let's wade into some murkier waters. What if you have to commit a crime to stop an even bigger disaster from happening? This is that classic lesser of two evils dilemma, and you guessed it, the law has a name for it. Just picture this. You're hiking, a freak blizzard rolls in out of nowhere, and you are literally freezing to death. You stumble across an empty cabin. Your only shot at survival is to break in. Now, technically, that's breaking and entering. But do you really think a jury would convict you? And that right there is a textbook case of the necessity defense. The law literally puts the harms on a scale. On one side, you have a broken lock. On the other, you have a person's death. It's a pretty clear choice, right? The act was justified because it was absolutely necessary to prevent a far, far greater tragedy. Then there's this idea of consent. Think about boxers. They consent to a level of physical contact that would be assault anywhere else. Same thing when a patient consents to surgery. But, and this is a huge but, this defense has very strict and very important limits. You can't just legally consent to serious bodily harm, and you can pretty much never consent to your own death. It's a super complex area where that line between permission and crime gets really blurry, really fast. And finally, we get to a category of justification that's pretty much reserved for a select few: law enforcement. Police officers are legally allowed to do things like use force that would be a crime for anyone else. But that power comes with some massive responsibilities. So officers can use the force that's necessary to make an arrest or protect the public. But that key word, and really the source of so much debate, is reasonable. The legal standard isn't what you or I might do from our armchairs. It's what a reasonable officer with similar training would do in that same split-second, high-stress situation. It's a justification that is constantly under a microscope, and for very good reason. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground, from self-defense to necessity to the really unique role of law enforcement. So now let's put our understanding to the test with one final real-world ethical dilemma. Here's a tough one for you. An ambulance, lights and sirens, carrying a dying patient is completely blocked by a protester. A bystander sees this, shoves the protester out of the way, clearing a path. The protester gets a minor injury, but the patient makes it to the hospital. Now, that bystander committed assault. Or did they? So what do you think? Was it a crime? Or was it justified? Could you argue it was defense of others? Or maybe a necessary act to prevent the much greater harm of the patient dying? As we've seen today, the law isn't always black and white. Context is everything. And it's in these gray areas that our legal system and really our own sense of justice gets truly tested. What would you decide?